It goes automatically online. It's live.
Okay. So
I can tell you there are already 104 attendees that are in the waiting room.
But is there a seat limit or not then?
200, yes.
Because we were informed it was 100.
Yes, but it changed. It changed now for 200.
And how many are there now?
In the waiting room, 106.
Oh, that's quite.
They're ready to start.
But it's always increase at the beginning. Yeah?
Yes. After 10 minutes will be the exact number.
So how many did you make yesterday, Caroline?
I don't know where to see that. Somebody told me 200, but I don't know.
Okay, we'll try to do a bit better. Huh?
I will tell you in the presenter's chat when we arrive at 200.
If we go to 250, we share a beer at some point.
The budget will be proportionate to the number of attendees.
Okay.
30 seconds left. Good luck.
Thanks a lot.
Allez, on croise les doigts.
So we are all on screen immediately? All four of us? Yeah. So, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. That is the second part of the Cluster 6 co-design workshop, the Cluster 6 of Horizon Europe, Food, Bioeconomy, Natural Resources, Agriculture and the Environment. We saw yesterday already where the interests are, and we try to focus eventually this discussion today on the issues which remained open yesterday. My name is Sven Schade. I'm in the strategy unit of DG RTD in the European Commission. I'm occasionally a pain in the neck to my colleagues Marc Duponcel, Caroline Potier, and Nathalie Bejima when I ask for more policy alignment and less completely crazy ideas. So I feel honored that they invite me to moderate the session today. Marc Duponcel will be our main speaker this morning. He is the head of the research sector in the R&I unit of DG Agri and the co-chair of Cluster 6. The other co-chair is Caroline Potier, working in DG RTD in the unit on ecological and social transitions. And she is co-chairing this cluster on the side of DG RTD. You got to know her yesterday already. And Nathalie Bejima is a colleague of Marc in DG Agriculture and is basically the major person in the background getting all the things together and having an overview. We share the task of moderating here the session and the Q&A and the chat. We would kindly ask you to use the Q&A for questions. It makes the things much easier for us to follow up. You can, in the Q&A, there is a small like button under a question which is published, and if you like a particular question, want to have it answered, please give them a thumbs up, and we can see how we can proceed. We want to be as interactive as possible, so we have put you 2 polls, and we have a third one during the session where we want to ask you how you think we should work and how we should design topics. So please explore the polling option and see what you want to give us. The first 2 questions are basically for to get accustomed to the instrument. Marc, I think you can already go ahead and start your presentation on this the second part of the expected impacts of the destinations of Cluster 6, and we come back for a discussion on this later. Marc, please.
Yeah, thanks, Sven. I will try to make the PPT as short as possible. If I talk too much, then you cut me short. Huh? So we will speak today about the three other expected impacts that we have discussed in the cluster. These are climate change, food and nutrition security, circular management of resource and prevention of pollution. That's hopefully will be 10 minutes. Then we have the 30 minutes discussion, and then we have a wrap up of 5 minutes. We have a 45-minute meeting now. Very quick on the structure of Horizon Europe. I mean, we are all the clusters in the pillar number 2, and we are the 6th one. We used to have a very nice name. It was food and natural resources, and now you see that we maybe have the most ugly and long title: food, bioeconomy, natural resources, agriculture, and environment. This is the most interesting cluster in Horizon Europe. A bit on the intervention logic. As we stand, there is an agreement on the content of Horizon Europe between the co-legislators, but still there are issues to be discussed, and in particular the budget. But the manner the research will be programmed with Horizon Europe will start with the strategic plan, for which we have contributed expected impacts, those 6 impacts that we mentioned, and those 6 impacts will also provide the main architecture of the work program that will be adopted at the beginning of next year. So what we want to discuss with you is what you think about those impacts. I mean, the 2 impacts we will speak about today, but also how we can make our best to maximize the potential outcome from the research and innovation that will be implemented in the work program. So a bit of information on the cluster. We are a cluster with 7 intervention areas. We cover a very wide scope. I mean, from environmental observations, biodiversity, forestry, agriculture, rural areas, oceans, seas, inland waters, bioeconomy, circular system, food system. So you see, we are a cluster with a very, very broad scope. And what we have tried to do so far, since we have been working together on this strategy programming, I mean, already 2 years ago, we are really trying to work among clusters and also across clusters. But also what you need to be aware is that there is a high level of co-creation also between all the DGs involved: Climat, Env, Gros, Marais, Agri, RTD, and other DGs. One important thing I would like to stress is that I think that among the clusters of Horizon Europe, we are probably the one that will make the strongest contribution to the European Green Deal. And you can see, I mean, it looks a bit like a flower, and our cluster is contributing to most of the petals of the Green Deal, whether that's protecting nature with biodiversity, climate law, climate change, the strategy from farm to fork, ensuring a just transition for all, eliminating pollution, striving for greener industry, circular economy, and so on. So we are really a cluster that should make a big contribution to the European Green Deal. Not just this, but a significant one. And today, I will give you a bit of details on only 3 of those expected impacts. I mean, climate neutrality and adaptation to climate change, food and nutrition security, and also the impact on sustainable and circular management and use of natural resources. I will try to be short on them. So let's start with climate change. Here, you can see where you have this exclamation mark. I don't know how to say that in English, actually. Next to intervention areas that shows that they are contributing to this impact. All intervention areas will contribute to it. And if you look a bit more at the details of what we have put there, There have been drafts circulating of that, which were already discussed last year with member states, with stakeholders, which are also being discussed now, and which will end up in the strategic plan to be adopted later this year or next year. So climate mitigation, adaptation, potential and ecosystem, and of ecosystems and production system better understood and sized. I mean, we need to know better what is taking place. Innovative production, transformation, distribution, consumption, reduce waste, leading to a reduction of the greenhouse gas emissions. Natural carbon sinks and capture enhancement that concerns soils and agriculture, forest, oceans, the bio-based industry, and so on. Adaptation to climate change. Resource efficiency, cascading use of biomass. I mean, this is at the core of the bioeconomy strategy. And also looking at the ocean climate nexus, which we need to better understand, and also looking at adaptation to sea level and coastal hazards, which are becoming an important issue. Like you've seen also forestry suffering a lot at the moment from climate change. The food and nutrition security. Here we have different intervention areas will contribute, but the main contributors will be IA3, agriculture, forestry, and rural areas, 4 seas, oceans, and inland waters, and 5 food systems. If you go to details, what do we aim to do is accelerating transition to sustainable, low ecological footprint and inclusive food system from production to consumption. We don't look at just parts of the supply chain. We have a what we call a system approach. Sustainable farming production reduces with reduction of the use of pesticides, antimicrobials, excess fertilization. I mean, those aspects are also part of the farm to fork strategy. Sustainable fisheries and aquaculture, including novel foods, have also a huge contribution to make. And we'll have, of course, I mean, research and innovation in key areas all along the supply chain, governance, alternative proteins, low trophic aquaculture, feed and food safety, just to name a few. We will also aim at reaching more balanced power relations along the food chain, the supply chain, ensuring access to affordable food. Shift to sustainable, healthy diets. This is also a key outcome that we would like to have, to really shift towards sustainable, healthy diets. And to reach all this, we also see a role for digitalization to enable sustainability and transparency in the supply chain. Now, if we go to the last one, I mean, sustainable and circular management and use of natural resources, as well as prevention and removal of pollution. I forgot to name the intervention areas that will contribute to it. That will be primarily circular systems, of course, IA7, IA6, bio-based innovation systems, and the bioeconomy, IA5, food systems, and also IA3, agriculture, forestry, and rural areas. What do we aim to do with this impact? We want to better understand what the planetary boundaries and material flows are, what they are. We need to understand them better, to define them better, and to measure them better, and monitor also from a policy point of view. We want to find innovative solutions for minimized circular use of resources, and mainstreaming of circular systems from local to global levels. We want to work at all geographical levels. And we do think that to maximize outcomes, it's also developing activities at the landscape, at the local level that we can start with. Prevention and mitigation of pollution. This is a key point, including nutrients, pesticides, plastics, and emerging contaminants for seas, oceans, water, soil, and air also. We want to boost circular approaches for competitiveness also, and contribution to fair distribution of the value added across the supply chain. Sustainable, forests have a big role to play in cluster 6. So sustainable forest management and delivery of multiple forest products and service will also be among the impacts that we want to reach. And finally, innovative bio-based solutions to replace fossil-based, carbon-intensive and harmful materials by replacing that by sustainable materials and chemicals. So in a nutshell, I tried to rush through. This is what we would like to do with those impacts. Then, I don't know, is it me or you, Sven, who posed the question? The question to you basically is how can we maximize the potential outcome from research and innovation in cluster 6? And that's a question to you. And we would like that you also share your views on that and your experiences. We have some ideas on how to foster implementation of what we research and innovate, but it is important that you also share your views, your experience on that. Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot, Mark. I have just put the third poll open, which is basically asking about which way should we work, and the responses are getting in, pretty fast. So just to tell you and to tell everybody here whom we have in the room, we have about 40% of research organizations. A quarter of the attendants are presenting enterprises or business associations, and around 10% each are private persons, national public authorities, regional or local authorities, or service provider a little bit less. When it comes to what are the colleagues, the participants most interested in, about a third have a particular focus on food and nutrition, slightly more than a quarter on sustainable circular economy and pollution prevention, and then less represented are the others like climate neutrality, innovative governance models, and the bottom of is rural coastal areas and biodiversity. Please don't hesitate to make a comment, and if you really have a substantial comment as a moderator, I have the privilege of inviting you then on the floor and make a comment. Let's see how interactive we can get. Mark, I see on the way to work basically the participatory approaches, piloting and demonstrating new approaches in real life, and a systemic approach, for example, including governance and technology issues, or working across environmental systems, almost equal. What do you think? How would you react to that? Whereas Cascading Grants and Pluridisciplinarity are a little bit back.
Well, pluridisciplinarity, I think this is something which is very important, but indeed which is not always very easy to do, and that also entails a bit of transaction costs among the scientists. But that's something that we need to push. But for the rest, that participatory approaches, demonstrations, work on the field, and also the systemic approach, which establishes a link with governance. I think this is very nice, and this is what I would see key among the things that we are trying to do. Participatory approach is really key to cluster 6, but I think also to the other clusters. There are different manners to do that. There is an approach that has been implemented under Horizon 2020. Participants, those that have participated in the Societal Challenge 2, have heard about it. That's the multi-actor approach. I mean, through which we want to empower all actors. I mean, all people carrying knowledge, whether that's tacit knowledge, knowledge from research, and so on, to work together from the beginning to the end of the project, and not just that we have a couple of farmers invited to join the final conference of a very nice project. So this is a key. On working on the ground, I mean, demonstrations. You were mentioning, Sven, demonstration piloting. I think also this is a key. And I think, I mean, with what we intend to do in the cluster in this area, there is very interesting stuff in the making. Living labs, for instance, will be used by different intervention areas. We'll do living labs with food systems. We will also we aim to establish a network of living labs in the sector of agroecology. And if you listen to the soil health and food mission this morning, you will have heard that the mission also will come with lighthouse demonstration projects and also living labs. So it is very important that we can bring everyone, not just everyone working together like what we do in Horizon 2020, but also to reinforce the place-based part of this collaboration. And of course, the link with the policymakers, the link with the wider environment is key. It's not easy to do. It's also a lot of work because it means that the projects that we have that can work in cluster are also in contact with the policymakers, whether that's at the local, the national, or the EU level, but not in contact at the end of the project, because then it is too late for a lot of issues. But from the beginning, and that there is a kind of a co-creation that goes beyond project members, but also those of the wider society and also the policymakers.
We have here one interesting question from Jan van Esch. What I miss in the food systems approach is how consumers will help farmers to become more sustainable. So where would you, in engaging the consumers in innovation activities, where is the border then to policy implementation?
Well,
where do we leave the field of research and innovation activities?
Mm-hmm. First answer, there are Caroline and Natalia sitting next. So I don't want to monopolize the speech. I mean, Natalia is in DG Agri or food system specialist, so it would be maybe better that she speaks in my place. But I think there are the connection with the policymakers, the policy and the wider society. When the projects discuss with a wider context, I think it is important that the consumers are there. I mean, that there is the discussion with the policymakers and also the consumers and also the other stakeholders at the same time. That would be one aspect. The other one is, I think, and that's what is already visible in the activities that are in societal challenge number 2 on, for instance, food and cities. It's also to find a geographical scale which allows all those actors to contribute together. So having projects that implement activities at the local, regional level, that is really a way also where we can involve all those, the consumers in a meaningful manner. An obvious target, for instance, is to work with municipalities. When you speak about food procurement canteens, what you want to develop with a local food system, you need to be in touch with the mayors and also with the consumers in whether that's the kids who go to school and so on. So that would be my answer. But the colleagues have probably better answers.
Caroline or Natalia, have you spotted very interesting questions? I have some, but there is a support expressed for the Cascading Grants. Could you quickly, perhaps for those who do not know this tool, quickly present it, what the meaning is, Mark?
Well, there is, in Horizon 2020, these cascading grants have been implemented primarily by DG Connect. They often have a very interesting ways to design projects. But we have also in DG Agri had a few projects with cascading grants. That's basically having big projects with 10 to 15 to 20 million euros that are invited. I mean, that's part of the specifications in the work program, or have to use part of their funds or the funds allocated in the project to the projects to implement that in cascading calls. So it means that you can reach, let's say that we have a specific project on climate change, and we would like to that people work together on strategies for mitigation and adaptation. But that could be another subject. Then we have the consortium, or two consortia, let's say two projects, 15 million euros each, and then they have the obligation. They have to use 5 or 7 million euros in terms of small grants that will finance and support the design of those strategies. So you have, that's a way really to reach many more beneficiaries. And in DG Connect, they have done that for startups and so on. In DG Agri, we, together with DG Connect, actually, we have also in the digital sector develop this kind of topics. And there are areas, many areas on what we want to work, whether that's climate change, the food system, also in the circular economy and so on, to foster multiplication of innovations, but also and tailoring of potential solutions in a lot of parts and backgrounds and environments in the EU, in Europe, to work like that. Of course, that's a bit of additional administration for the consortia, but that's a way to work. These are projects that are not that easy to implement, and they are a somewhat bigger machinery that a consortium without cascading grants, but that can really have an impact for diffusion, uptake, deployment.
Torben Høck Hansen states social sciences and humanities dimension should be far more integrated in the analysis of the problems we face, and try to be addressed in the work program, and thereby far better integrated in the formulation of destinations and topics. So social sciences and humanities is simply too often just an add-on. That's seemingly his impression. What would you respond? Are we really good in integrating social sciences and humanities already?
Well, I think that we probably need to make progress, but the more we adopt projects that are have a participatory nature, that brings different sorts of stakeholders and so on, I mean that immediately should trigger the participation of different types of researchers in social science and humanities. This is one aspect. I think that in societal challenge 2, the one that I know better, we have really tried to have SSH playing an important role. That's not just economics, but that's also sociologists, rurologists, and so on. And we do think that this is very important. And the manner we are working on the work program now, draft work program, and I think that there is a very wide series of topics where this is there de facto because they will work in a systemic manner. And when you work in a systemic manner, you have to have not just people, biologists and so on. You need to have agronomists, you need to have food technologists, you need also to have sociologists, you need to have economists also to look at all that. And also for the implementation of the policy recommendations that can come from the projects, it is extremely important that you have mobilized a sufficient array of scientists working in the area of SSH. To make sure that you will be able to reach the targets that you want.
So a strong plea for better integration, and we give it back, and you give it back to the applicants, to future applicants, and say, look, if you see it missing, you often find it in the questions we pose and in the destinations itself. So bring it in yourself and take an active approach. So you're playing ping pong.
Yeah, but sometimes, it is we are asking for interdisciplinary. This is mentioned in quite a few topics. So that was in Horizon 2020, but that's also something that needs to be taken seriously by the scientists themselves, because as I was saying at the beginning of the webinar, also working with very different disciplines is not something that you do just like that. That also implies that you learn to talk to other specialists, that you respect them, that there is a real dialogue that is set. For us, we have to push for that, definitely, but it doesn't mean that it is easy to do. And for evaluating purposes, I think it is easier to evaluate a monodiscipline project that no longer exists in the clusters, I guess, than a pluridisciplinary one, which is also participatory and so on. This is for also for the evaluators, for the scientists, for everyone. This is more demanding, but it's fun.
Another part of the fun, Thomas Mroch writes, are there any ideas on how to geographically balance the uptake? Currently, the vast majority of pilots, demonstration and deployments take place in Western Europe, including living labs and lighthouses. It is imperative to encourage innovation actions and market uptake in Central and Eastern Europe as well.
Yeah.
So how do we get a balance, and how do we get also, we are not only dealing with the geography, with the political geography, but also with biogeography, and saying, look, we have here very different ecosystems, very different agroecological environments, very different impacts of climate change in future. How would you see this? How can we work really across Europe?
I think we need. It is also a matter of capacity building. The resources that will be devoted for this kind of widening questions, as we call them in the Commission language, will increase with Horizon Europe. But I think a key point is to make sure that we cover. Indeed, we can ask that projects cover all EU main regions and so on. There are ways that we have to ensure that projects will take place in different countries, and also in Central Europe, for instance. But of course, this is a capacity building that also, it's not just the projects, the topics, the manner we formulate them, for which we need to be careful, but it's also capacity building, being in part of the networks, part of the machinery already, which is quite important. And then for some big initiatives, we can also use some other tools. For instance, we are we are pushing strong with agroecology research and innovation in the cluster. And a manner to ensure that we would have coverage that would go to different countries, member states, is also to put it as a partnership, because that also is a way to raise the interest of the authorities in the different member states, and to put them in the systems. There are other manners to do that. Also, I mentioned before the cascading, for instance, Cascading Grants. They are also a way to reach regions, countries where they receive a bit less financing from the EU. And I think also one important thing that we should try to do is, for the different topic that we finance, that we also support different projects. Because if we have a topic which finance only one project or two projects, it's quite often the usual suspects that we will have. I mean, they are very respectable. I mean, it's not a problem, but it's nice that we can bring fresh blood also in the machinery. So multiplying the number of projects that could be financed is also a manner to have scientists from countries where the research is less supported by the EU, but also not usual suspects in the other countries. I think that's an important aspect and an important role that we have also at the EU level to foster the diversity and the participation of as different entities in research and innovation, because we should not just limit ourselves to the usual suspects.
Mark, Thomas Watch continues with the question and gets quite substantial support on it. Will Horizon Europe continue with the multi-actor approach based on operational groups? And what is the future of the EIP Agri and the interplay between the two? And perhaps you could add some thoughts on other synergies, for example, with for the cluster outside the agriculture, so with the recovery and resilience program, for example.
That's quite. I will try to be short on that. With the Horizon 2020, 2/3 of the projects financed in agricultural area have been implemented with the Multiactor approach. So that's basically 1 billion euros that have been invested in those type of projects. And with this approach, with the Multiactor approach, which, as I said before, is not just ticking the box of the couple of farmers' organizations at the end of the project. It is much more demanding than that. We try to foster that. And of course, I mean, it's not at a time when we need that even more that we would stop this. I mean, if for those of you who are aware about the discussions related to the CAP, research and innovation, knowledge and innovation is a cross-cutting specific objective of the policy. And with the strategic plans that are being prepared by the member states, there are also obligations which concern the agricultural knowledge and innovation system, the AKIS, as we call it. So this is becoming even more important than it was in the current period. So we will definitely continue with this. We will. The EIP Agri is the machinery that has linked the research policy with the CAP, with the multi-actor approach, and also the operational groups that were mentioned by the participant. Those operational groups are basically bottom-up innovation projects that are implemented and financed through rural development measures. But I mean, and these are projects, but next to that we have pipes. I mean, what is important is to generate knowledge, but what is more important is also to have it circulate. And we in DG Agri, we are not plumbers, but we take care of knowledge pipes, and that's a key issue. Networks. So there is the EIP network, which is connecting the research and innovation projects that we have in Horizon 2020 with operational groups, those bottom-up projects at local level throughout the EU, and those pipes are really key. So we have an upgrade of the EIP with the new CAP. We will continue with the multi-actor approach. We will discuss it with the member states when we discuss the work program, how we could adjust it and so on. Maybe we can also have an internal discussion to see how some element of it could also be relevant for the parts of the clusters. I mean, this is discussions that we need to have now. But of course, I think we need to go one step further. So that's to see how we can reach the consumers. I mean, we are more with the multi-actor approach with the users, direct users of the innovations. We have to see how we do the participatory research with the consumers and so on. And well, I think I lost my.
Bernhard Kastner is writing, he said he doesn't want to monopolize the discussion, yet the old white man is still doing it. I think they mean us, but the reason is that Caroline and Natalia have some connecting problems in the back.
No, I don't have any connecting problems. Just
Natalia, do you want to step in on something which you spotted on in the discussion?
you mean Natalia or me?
No, you. Sorry, Caroline.
Okay, thank you. Yes, if I may jump in, I saw several questions about systemic approach, and I think it's very interesting in cluster 6. But I was wondering if we could give the floor to the participants. Is it possible to give the floor, for instance, to Camille Lépiné or Bianca Sevicki?
Agnes, could you, if they want to, take the floor? Yes, but
okay. Otherwise, I can try to give at least a flavor of how we work in the Commission, because it's true that we have now this big cluster 6, which is the result of merging two previous societal challenges. Societal challenge 2, dealing with agriculture. Do you hear me?
yes.
And societal challenge 5, dealing with environment and climate. And so we have a new configuration which gives a lot of opportunities for cross-cutting research and innovation activities. So it's a new way of working. I think we will manage to have a beautiful work program with many calls dealing with systemic research. Of course, this is not possible to have the whole work program dealing with the same approach, but this is something that we try to implement. And we have this comment from Bianca Kavicki asking how we could implement this, because she says many people using the notion of social and environmental externalities, but we need to overcome this idea of externalities. So I think now we have the tool to do that with cluster 6. It's just a matter of developing now the right approach. Now that we are working together, we have in the same cluster, we have colleagues from DG Research and Innovation and colleagues from DG Agriculture. So we understand each other quite well, I think. And so this is the way we are working now. And I wanted also to comment on the what Camille Lépiné has written. She says, would not there be to find a better balance between, on the one hand, topics calling for systemic and interdisciplinary approach, and on the other hand, maybe more focused on concrete topics, perhaps through cascading grants, to foster the involvement of smaller actors on the ground like farmers, SME, and consortia. So for the time being, we have developed a very wide range of possible calls and topics. But of course, at the end, we will have to face reality. We will have to make sure that with the budget that will be available, we can do everything that is planned. But this is the approach that we are developing now.
We are slowly coming to the end of the session. Natalia, do you want to come in for a moment, or are you still completely disconnected? Natalia? No, it doesn't seem to work with Natalia. Mark, pick something. We have from the polls we have an almost equality of the preferred methods to maximize impact. The strongest is with 27% piloting and demonstrating new approaches in real life. But 22% each for the participatory approaches and for systemic approaches. So that is pretty close to one another. Cascading Grants, pluridisciplinarity with around 14, slightly back. Are we on a good track with that?
I think yes.
To the interest?
Yeah. Well, I would say yes. I mean, everything is covered. And if piloting and demonstrations, they get the higher chair. In any case, if they want to succeed, they will have to be participatory, because demonstrations that are not participatory or pilots that are not participatory, that means that are not plugged to the territory, to the people that they are supposed to work with, will never work. So I think that's a very good summary. Caroline?
Caroline, you want to add something?
No, for me, I think it is an excellent thing to have this poll. And the results are quite interesting, because it seems also that it is linked to the audience and the three impacts that we had chosen to deal with together. Yesterday we had another session dealing with the three other impacts, and maybe we would have had a different result.
On the focus, I would agree on the second question. I want to conclude my policy coordination head on, and basically advise you, and if you are interested in responding to the calls we will publish, don't think only in terms of the research and innovation program. Yeah, in particular, in the next years, with this recovery and resilience program, and in particular for the green projects, there will be plenty of opportunities also with your regional or national governments to apply for projects which are, on the one hand, innovative, and on the other hand, supporting the green transition or the digital transition. Sometimes where I see occasionally an issue is if we are demonstrating with communities on a local level. We have location-based innovation. We need local value chains. We need people working deeply together. And that sometimes doesn't go easily together with a European transnational excellence approach. Which role does an excellent university in Scandinavia play for local innovation in Spain, for local innovation along value chains in Spain or in Romania? Maybe you realize your ideas looking at all programs, not only looking at Horizon Europe. In the field of agriculture, you are in a privileged position with the EIP Agri, where this was really set in stone as a strategy already years ago. And I would sincerely hope that we find a way to copy that model of EIP Agri over the years, over Horizon Europe in other areas. I thank you for your participation. It's 11:15. I think that was the time, 45 minutes, which went pretty far. My first experience in moderating such a discussion. Your questions, your comments will not be lost. They will be stored. We keep them in mind. They are recorded. They are on the record. Also, what you have posed as questions, which unfortunately were, with all our best efforts, not able to respond. In that time, and with 3-4 people working in the background. We are learning. Thanks a lot for your attention. Thanks a lot to Mark, Caroline, and Natalia for doing the work for doing the preparation. I wish you good other sessions. Thanks a lot.